this video is going to be about how to do some lightweight customization of the generative AI Copilot. So this is what was formerly called Power Virtual Agents with conversational boosting. So we're going to add a little bit of flavor to how it responds to questions, and we're going to customize the starting message, the escalation, and how it moves to the end of the conversation. So I'm going to go through how to create one from scratch because it only takes a second. So let's just go back from the Maker portal, so make.powerapps.com. If you go to the Power Platform menu here, there's a category for Power Virtual Agents, and that's the one you want. There's also, if you go to this More menu, a menu option for chatbots. Those go to the same place. I'm guessing they'll update the link text to say Copilot instead of Power Virtual Agents in the near future, so don't be surprised if that changes. And the licensing for this is a little bit different from most of the other Microsoft 365 products, so it is a flat rate per month. That license is not applied to any particular user. It's for your entire organization. And you get 25,000 messages as of the time of this video, along with that license package. So you can buy additional too, obviously, but just so you know how the licensing works before we start, I've got this is just a trial. They do let you run trials. So in my dev account, I've got a trial license running, and we just go to this create a new chatbot menu here. We give it a website. So this is going to be the website that it uses to answer questions. You can have more than one website here. It also works with SharePoint. However, SharePoint and other sources are going to be some assembly required for setting up the authentication. Public websites are super easy to get up and running. So I'm just going to hand it the Microsoft Learn website, and then we can ask questions about Power Platform for examples and click Create. And the way that this chatbot works is it's not a conversational chatbot per se, like you don't have a back and forth conversation. It's just answering questions. So what happens is you ask it a question, it tries to look for the answer in whatever its linked sources are. And if it can't find an answer, it will say, I don't know how to help you with that. And what it's going to do is it's going to check whatever pre-baked topics it has set up. So you can configure based on trigger words, specific behavior that you want it to do for any particular language. So for example, if you wanted to have it answer questions about your store hours in a very particular way, the same every time, you would just set up a topic for that and it would respond with that every time. So it checks those first, and then if it can't find an answer there, it goes to its linked sources. And when I say linked sources, what I mean is it's searching with an index of that content. So if it's a public website, it's using the Bing index. If you have some kind of custom source, it's going to be using whatever Azure search index you have set up for it. So the first thing you'll notice is that the starter message that you have is very generic and bland. Hi, I'm a virtual assistant. Just so you're aware, sometimes I use AI. If you're making a chatbot that you're advertising as an AI chatbot, you probably don't want to say, I sometimes use AI. You're going to be like, this is an AI virtual assistant, right? So if we want to customize this, we can. The first thing I want to point out is that you can go into the generative AI category here, and you can add multiple websites. You're limited on the depth of the path that you give it, so it can only go 2 levels down, but you can have more than one in here. I think it's up to 4 or 5, something like that. And you can also upload specific files. And then the content moderation is going to be basically how loosey-goosey is it. I kind of have pretty good luck putting it on medium, so I'm going to go with that and then make sure to save that. So all of the configurations for how it's going to respond to specific things is going to be in the topics area over here. So it's going to start with a welcome message, and you would think that that would be the greeting, but actually it's under the system category over here on the right. It's this conversation start topic. So if I open that, it'll let me edit the message. So that's this here. So this is what's showing up over here. So it's using its bot name, and we can edit this text. All right, so then you want to save this. So that's the start message. There's a few other things we want to check. So if we go back to topics in the breadcrumbs up here, back in the system messages, there is a escalate message. So the escalation, if it can't find the answer to a question, I think it's 2 or 3 times in a row, it's going to try and run this escalation topic. So you want to configure this so that it does what you want it to do. So by default, it's going to say that it's not configured for this bot. You can have it prompt with a dynamic content card to create a ticket in a system if you want to in here. That would use Power Automate. So what you do is you add a Power Automate action in here that kind of passes data to Power Automate and then back to the bot. So this is an introductory video, so I'm not going to go through all of that today because it's fairly lengthy, but we do want to customize this language a little bit. And you could put in some contact information for how to get a hold of a real person in here too. So that's the escalation. If we go back to the topic tree and go to the system category, conversational boosting is the one that has the AI actions in it by default. So this is the one that basically happens if the bot doesn't know what to do with a question, it'll try answering with AI. So that's this on unknown intent. And you can add kind of a little bit of a system message in here. So if you're familiar with system messages in AI, they usually are used to kind of guide how the AI behaves a little bit. This is, if you go into this ellipses menu for the Create Generative Answers node, there's a Properties menu, and in Properties, you have the option to add custom instructions. So you could add a message in here to ask your AI respond with a particular voice. What I've noticed is that it has a fairly heavy kind of guardrails on it. So I tried to get my bot to be kind of like sassy and make rude jokes, and it really does not want to do that. I thought it would be funny as an example, but I can't get it to do that. So what we can do with this instead is give it something a little bit more positive. It seems to be kind of okay with that. So I've seen one of the Microsoft program managers had it talk like a pirate. So that works pretty well, but I'm going to tell it to pretend it's Batman. And it doesn't seem to use this very heavily. So if you've used ChatGPT, like it doesn't get fully into its kind of persona like ChatGPT does, but it does use it a little bit. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's save this and then ask it a question. All right, so if we look at this text, basically the only thing in here that sounds kind of Batmanish is the joke at the end. I have had it use a little bit of flavor at the beginning at the end, but it doesn't seem to like to change how the language is used on the actual references it's using. So that's kind of interesting. I feel like what they're trying to do here is they really don't want the chatbot to be insulting to users, even if it's programmed to be, because there could be backlash for that. So very heavy guardrails on this thing. And that's kind of a good thing too. So what this is doing is it's only responding to things that it can find an answer to in its linked content. So if you ask it to write you a contract for $1 million or whatever car dealership it was that ran into that problem with ChatGPT, it's not going to do that because it won't be able to find an answer about that content in its sources, right? So it's fairly safe in that way. So the other thing I want to talk about is reporting. The copilots have a little bit of built-in reporting. However, so there's a CSAT score and there's a percentage correctness measure. The thing is that the conversation topic that records that information and asks the user to give it a score never gets triggered if you're using the generative AI. We can fix that, but you do have to go in and set it, okay? So what's happening is it hits the end current topic and it ends the current topic and waits for another question. If you want it to trigger the CSAT question, what you want to do is just take this out and then put in a node, that is in this topic management category, and go to another topic and go to end of conversation. So end of conversation as a topic does not end the conversation per se. What it does is it asks the questions that come at the end of the conversation. So that's the CSAT question and the was this response correct question. So if we do that and save it and then ask our question again, it asks, did that answer your question? And you can respond with yes or no. And then it gives you a survey, so a score of 1 to 5. So that's going to be recorded in the Dataverse table. I think it's called conversation transcripts. It's a very lengthy JSON blob of a field that has all this in there. If you want a more controlled question and answer, is this correct? What's the score on each question? You may want to log that information yourself with Power Automate as part of the conversation boosting topic. That might be a future video topic. We'll see if I get to it. There is some baked in reporting in here. It's, in my opinion, a little bit iffy. It takes forever to load, and honestly, I think I would prefer to create my own reporting, but then I'm a Power BI person, so I'm very picky about my Power BI reports. Okay, yeah, it's still loading. So your next step after you've got your bot configured would be to publish it. So the publish button is right over here on the left. So you publish it. Any changes you make, your users that are interacting with the bot won't see them until you have published it. As far as where you embed this thing, you have the option in the channels. So under settings and channels, oh, it finally loaded. Okay, so another thing is the conversation history has a bit of a lag to it too, so it won't show up in the reporting right away. And then we want to make sure that our authentication is set up right. So if we go to security on the left-hand side over here, so if we click on authentication, it defaults to only for Teams and Power Apps. So if you're going to use this in Teams, that's totally fine. If you're putting this on a public website, you're going to need to use no authentication. If your source is also a public website, obviously. If your source is SharePoint, you're going to do the manual authentication or any other custom sources. So I'm going to save this. And what I've noticed is when you change authentication settings, sometimes it takes a really long time to percolate. So if you set this to no authentication and then go embed it in a channel right away and you're wondering why you're getting an error, just give it a couple of hours. And then under channels here is where you choose where you want to use the bot. So Copilot, that's going to be the Microsoft 365 Copilot. You can use it there. If you have that licensing, you can use it in Teams. If you're using this bot anywhere in Microsoft 365, also make sure to share the bot. That was also under the authentication settings. So you need to share it with the people that are going to access it. So this demo website, it basically gives you an example that you can play around with and share with people. But if you want to embed this on a public website, you would choose custom website here, and that gives you an embed script. You can customize the look and feel of the embed a little bit. There's a link in MS Learn for that. It basically involves editing an HTML file and using that with an iframe. This embed code does actually work in SharePoint as long as you add the domain here, this web.powerva.microsoft.com, to the allowed sites list in the SharePoint admin settings for the site. You just put it in an embed web part. Just be kind of careful with that. I wouldn't embed it on a homepage of a SharePoint site because it will start a conversation every time somebody loads the page. So you could inadvertently really skyrocket your logging of non-existent conversations. If you do that, put it on its own page. And then there's also some other embed options here. I haven't used these for the most part. So that's the very quick tour of Copilot Studio. I hope this was useful and have a great day.